Welcome to today's deep dive. We'll be focusing on ADHD and looking closely at Thriving with Practical Solutions by Dr. P Ayesha.
That's good.
We'll cover a lot of ground from, what ADHD actually is to busting some of those myths that are out there and then practical solutions that the book talks about.
Okay.
I was thinking, even if someone listening hasn't been diagnosed with ADHD, this deep dive could still resonate with them.
Yeah.
We've all had times where our brains feel all over the place or we just can't seem to focus.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, understanding ADHD can really help anyone understand how their own brain works.
Right.
It can even help people improve their focus, how productive they are, or even how they manage their emotions.
Exactly. And the book dives right in by clearly defining ADHD. It says up front that ADHD is a neurodevelopmental condition.
Okay.
It's not just a matter of like willpower or, being lazy. It's not a character flaw or anything.
And that's such a crucial point because it helps to, reduce the stigma around ADHD.
For sure.
People with ADHD have been told for so long to just try harder or just focus, but that completely misses the point.
Yeah.
It's like, telling someone with a broken leg to just walk it off.
Totally. The book even shares the story about a young girl named Sarah who was constantly getting in trouble at school.
Oh.
And her parents really thought she was choosing to misbehave.
Oh, wow.
But it turns out she had undiagnosed ADHD.
It's so common.
Yeah.
And the book has this really great analogy for what's happening in an ADHD brain. It compares it to a radio
Okay.
that's constantly switching channels,
Yeah.
making it hard to tune into one thing for very long.
I love that analogy. So the book also addresses some common and really harmful myths about ADHD, like the idea that ADHD isn't a real thing.
Right.
Or that it's just an excuse for people to be lazy.
Yeah, that myth about laziness is so damaging.
It is.
It gets used to dismiss people's real struggles.
It is.
And it makes them feel like they're just not trying hard enough. The book cites research showing that 60% of children with ADHD will continue to have symptoms even as adults.
Oh.
So it's definitely not something people just grow out of.
Yeah, it really makes me think of Lisa, whose story is featured in the book. She was always labeled as lazy when she was in school because it would take her twice as long to finish assignments compared to her classmates.
Okay.
And it wasn't until later that she was diagnosed with ADHD and everyone realized it wasn't laziness at all.
Right.
It was this very real struggle to focus and manage her time.
Yeah, and that actually brings up another big misconception about ADHD, that it's always about being hyperactive.
Right.
While some people do have those hyperactive symptoms, others are what we call predominantly inattentive.
Okay.
They might have trouble focusing or with their memory or staying organized, but they're not necessarily bouncing off the walls.
Right.
And so this inattentive type often gets missed because it's not as disruptive, which can lead to delays in diagnoses and getting the support they need.
Now, here's where the book takes a turn that really surprised me. It starts talking about practical solutions.
Okay.
And one of the first things it mentions is that even something as simple as being dehydrated can really affect ADHD symptoms.
Really?
Yeah, who knew, right?
That is fascinating.
The book explains that even mild dehydration can impair brain function, making it even harder for someone with ADHD to focus and pay attention.
That makes sense.
And then there's diet. The book's not saying there's this super strict ADHD diet you have to follow.
Right.
But it does talk about how important it is to cut down on sugar and processed foods.
Ah.
It's more about being aware of how what we eat affects our brains in general.
I mean, think about how you feel after eating a sugary snack versus a balanced meal.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about calories. It's about the impact on your energy levels,
Yeah.
your mood, your ability to think clearly.
Totally. I can totally relate to that sugar crash feeling. And the book also talks about the benefits of omega-3 fatty acids for ADHD brains.
That's interesting.
Which, makes me think maybe we should all be paying more attention to those little changes we can make to our diet
Yeah,
to support our mental well-being.
definitely.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that benefit everyone, the book talks about the crucial role of sleep.
Oh, yeah.
It's important for everyone, but especially for those with ADHD because they often have trouble sleeping.
True.
And that creates this kind of vicious cycle where ADHD makes it hard to sleep, and then not sleeping enough just makes the ADHD symptoms worse.
Right. But the good news is the book offers some helpful tips for getting better sleep, like setting a consistent sleep routine, creating a relaxing bedtime ritual, and limiting screen time before bed.
Yeah, those are good practices for anyone, really.
Exactly. And that brings us to screen time, the elephant in the room.
Ah, yes.
While screen time doesn't cause ADHD,
Right.
too much screen time can definitely make symptoms worse.
For sure.
The book actually tells the story about a 9-year-old named Jack, whose ADHD was really a constant struggle, until his family tackled all these lifestyle factors together. The hydration, the diet, the screen time, and the sleep.
Oh, wow.
It's a great example of how even small changes can make a big difference.
It really is. And what's fascinating is how interconnected all of these things are.
Yeah.
We tend to think of ADHD as just a brain issue.
Yeah.
But it's really constantly being affected by things outside of us, many of which we can actually control.
The book also dives into this idea of coexisting conditions and explains how ADHD rarely travels alone.
Right.
It says it's estimated that up to 60% of people with ADHD have at least one other condition.
Yeah, like anxiety or autism or a mood disorder.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important to have a holistic view when it comes to diagnosis and treatment.
Absolutely. We can't just, slap an ADHD label on someone and call it a day.
Right.
We really need to consider the whole picture so we can address their individual needs.
Anxiety seems to be a really common one that goes along with ADHD.
It is.
The book talks about how debilitating that combination can be. Imagine trying to focus on a task. Oh, yeah.
But you're also feeling this intense fear of failing.
It's like a double whammy.
It is.
Yeah.
And the book offers solutions here, too, that can actually be applied more broadly. CBT, mindfulness structured routines.
Yeah.
These are all tools that can help people manage their mental well-being, no matter what their diagnosis is.
Exactly. It's about empowering people to take control of their own well-being.
Okay, before we move on, I have to ask about something that totally caught my eye in the book.
What's that?
It mentions this question. Can cats have ADHD?
Thanks. I love that they address that.
I know, right?
It shows how playful the book is and how committed the author is to making these complex topics accessible.
Yeah.
And the answer, by the way, is no, cats can't be diagnosed with ADHD.
Okay.
But the book explains how observing those sometimes ADHD-like behaviors in pets can actually be a good way for kids to understand their own struggles.
Such a clever approach.
It is.
And it's a good way to make this topic that can feel overwhelming a little more relatable.
So speaking of relatable, let's talk about school. The book does a good job of explaining how the traditional classroom setting can be a nightmare for ADHD brains.
Oh, yeah, all that sitting still. The constant demand for focus.
Yeah,
exactly.
tough.
It is. The book doesn't shy away from those challenges. It acknowledges that this traditional school setting, with its rigid structure and all that emphasis on focusing for long periods of time, can be a recipe for frustration for students with ADHD.
It can.
But it doesn't stop there. It offers practical strategies like incorporating movement breaks, breaking down tasks into smaller chunks, and utilizing IEPs.
Right, and the book's approach to IEPs is particularly helpful.
It is.
It really guides families through that process of getting an IEP, which can be pretty overwhelming.
It can.
And it highlights the benefits of having one in place. You know, it creates a more supportive learning environment for students with ADHD.
Right. It's about leveling the playing field, not lowering expectations.
Exactly.
It's about creating a learning environment where these kids can actually thrive, not just survive.
Yeah. But what about after school? Adults in the workplace face their own set of challenges related to ADHD, right?
Absolutely. Disorganization, procrastination, time management, impulsivity.
You know, those sound pretty familiar, even for someone without ADHD.
Laughs. You're not wrong. But for someone with ADHD, these challenges are often amplified.
Right.
Which can make it that much harder to succeed in a professional setting.
And this is where the book's practical advice really shines. It offers solutions for adults, too, like using external tools such as lists and reminders, breaking down tasks into smaller steps, and even seeking accommodations from their employers.
And again, a lot of this advice is beneficial for anyone, whether they have ADHD or not.
So true.
It's all about working smarter, not harder.
The book even goes a step further and talks about the legal system.
Oh, wow.
And how ADHD can impact people's interactions with it. This includes things like financial management and potential issues within the criminal justice system.
It really shows how comprehensive this book is.
It does. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about what the book says about cutting-edge research and treatments for ADHD.
Okay.
Because our understanding of ADHD is rapidly evolving.
It is. It's really a new era of ADHD research and treatment.
It is.
Brain imaging is now revealing structural differences in the brains of people with ADHD.
Oh, wow.
Genetic testing is helping to guide treatment approaches, and we're learning more about how things in the environment can affect ADHD.
Okay.
We're even understanding more about how ADHD can present differently in men and women.
You know, that point about gender differences really resonated with me. It made me think about anyone whose symptoms don't fit that stereotypical picture of ADHD
Yeah,
and how they might be struggling to get a diagnosis or the support they need.
exactly.
The book does a good job of validating those experiences and making it clear that ADHD can show up differently in different people.
And there are some really exciting new treatment avenues opening up as well.
Like what?
Well, there's digital therapeutics, which is incredible.
I know. Imagine treating ADHD with video games.
Right. The book talks about Endeavor Rocks, which is FDA approved for kids with ADHD.
Okay.
It's designed to help with attention function through gameplay.
It's like brain training disguised as entertainment.
It is, but there's even more on the horizon. The book also explores neurofeedback and brain stimulation techniques like TMS.
Wow, those sound intense.
They do, but they have the potential to really revolutionize ADHD care in the years to come.
It feels like we're on the cusp of a major breakthrough in understanding and treating ADHD.
It does.
Mhm.
And while it's exciting to think about those new technologies, the book doesn't forget about the importance of those lifestyle changes.
Yeah.
Medications and therapies can be really helpful,
Right.
but they're not magic bullets.
Mm.
Managing ADHD is a holistic process,
Yeah.
and lifestyle plays a huge role.
So what are some of those key lifestyle changes that the book recommends?
Well, first and foremost, there's sleep.
Okay.
Getting enough quality sleep is absolutely crucial for everyone, but it's especially important for people with ADHD. The book really stresses the importance of establishing a consistent sleep routine,
Okay.
creating a calming bedtime ritual, and limiting screen time before bed.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in the power of a good night's sleep.
Me too. And then there's diet.
What are some of the specific recommendations there?
The book emphasizes a balanced diet that's rich in whole foods.
Okay.
It recommends minimizing processed foods and sugary snacks.
Right.
It's not about following a strict ADHD diet.
Uh-huh.
It's more about recognizing the impact that food has on brain function and behavior.
Right. It's like the you are what you eat principle, but for brain health.
Exactly. And we can't forget about hydration.
Oh, yeah. It's so easy to forget to drink enough water, especially when we're busy.
It is, and even mild dehydration can make those ADHD symptoms worse.
So the book recommends making a conscious effort to drink water throughout the day.
Yes, not just when you feel thirsty.
Good point. Okay, so we've covered sleep, diet, hydration. What about exercise? We talked about how it can be a game changer for ADHD.
It can. For one thing, exercise helps to increase dopamine and norepinephrine,
Okay.
which are neurotransmitters that are really important for attention, focus, and motivation.
So getting regular exercise can actually help improve those brain functions.
It can't. It's like a natural boost for your brain.
I love that. But does it have to be intense exercise to get those benefits?
Not at all. The book emphasizes that even moderate activity can make a big difference.
Like what?
A brisk walk, a bike ride, a swim, a dance class.
Okay.
Anything that gets you moving and elevates your heart rate can be beneficial.
And the key is to find something you enjoy, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because if it feels like a chore, you're less likely to stick with it.
So true. And you know what's really cool about all of these lifestyle changes?
Yeah.
They're not just for people with ADHD. These are things that can benefit everyone.
Absolutely. It's about taking a proactive approach to your overall health and well-being.
And that's something we can all get behind.
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, it really is a new era of research and treatment for ADHD. And, as we wrap up looking at this book, I keep thinking about neurodiversity and, creating a world that embraces and celebrates all these different ways of thinking.
You're right. It's about moving away from that deficit-based model where we see ADHD as like a problem that needs to be fixed.
Right.
And instead embracing a strengths-based model where we recognize the unique abilities and perspectives that come with ADHD.
Exactly. And I think this book showcases those strengths so well with those success stories it includes.
They are so inspired.
They challenge that old stereotype that ADHD keeps people from succeeding.
Yeah.
And show how people with ADHD can thrive in all areas of life if they have the right support and use the right strategies.
Absolutely. From entrepreneurs who use their creativity to their advantage to artists who channel their hyper-focus into their art, it's clear that ADHD brains are often wired for innovation and thinking outside the box.
And it's not just about individual success either. When we embrace neurodiversity, we create a richer and more dynamic society as a whole.
Imagine a world where instead of trying to squeeze everyone into the same mold,
Right?
we celebrate those unique contributions that each person brings to the table.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Regardless of how their brain is wired.
And in that world, people who think differently, who challenge the way things are done, who see things from a different angle.
Yeah.
They're not seen as problems to be solved, but as valuable assets.
Exactly. It's about shifting our perspective away from seeing ADHD as a disorder
Mm.
and recognizing that it's just a different way of being, a different way of experiencing the world.
Such a powerful shift in perspective. And I think that benefits everyone, not just those with ADHD.
I agree. It's about being more compassionate and inclusive as a society.
Yeah, where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued for who they are.
And that makes me think about the role education plays in all of this.
For sure.
The more we all learn about ADHD and other neurodevelopmental differences,
Yeah.
the better equipped we'll be to create that kind of world.
Absolutely. Education is key. It helps us bust those harmful myths and misconceptions that lead to stigma and discrimination.
It does.
It's about giving teachers, parents, and even kids themselves the knowledge they need to really support those with ADHD.
Right. And it's about fostering empathy and compassion,
Yeah.
not just for people with ADHD, but for anyone who thinks or learns or acts differently than what we consider typical.
Right. It's about creating a culture of acceptance and celebrating how diverse our minds can be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, as we've been talking about all of this, I've been thinking about how much the book emphasizes self-compassion
Oh, yeah.
and how important that is, not just for people with ADHD, but for everyone.
It's so easy to get caught up in self-criticism, especially when we're struggling.
It is.
But self-compassion is about being kind to ourselves and understanding ourselves.
Right. Just like we would treat a good friend.
Exactly. And for people with ADHD who often deal with criticism and judgment from others,
Yeah,
self-compassion can be so important.
it can.
It's about silencing that inner voice that's always putting you down and recognizing that you're doing the best you can with the brain you have.
It is. And it's about celebrating those wins you have, no matter how small they might seem.
Because even those small victories, like getting out of bed on a tough day or
Yeah.
finishing a task that felt overwhelming, or even just showing up for yourself, those
Yeah.
are all worth celebrating.
Absolutely. And remember, self-compassion isn't about letting yourself off the hook or making excuses for yourself.
Right.
It's about recognizing that you are worthy of love and support, even when you make mistakes or don't quite reach your goals.
It's about treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer to someone you care about.
Exactly. And, you know, the more I learn about ADHD, the more I realize how much it can teach us all about what it means to be human.
What do you mean?
Well, think about some of those core challenges that come with ADHD, like impulsivity,
Yeah.
being easily distracted, and being emotionally sensitive. These are all things that we all struggle with to some extent.
That's so true. I mean, who hasn't been totally sidetracked by a notification on their phone or struggled to resist eating something they know they shouldn't?
Right. And I think a lot of those strategies the book talks about for managing ADHD, things like mindfulness, self-regulation, and surrounding yourself with support, those are things that can benefit everyone.
It's like ADHD gives us this glimpse into how the human brain works.
Duh.
And in doing so, it offers us insights and tools that we can all use to live more fulfilling and meaningful lives.
And it reminds us that even though our brains are wired differently, we all share those same basic human needs.
What are those?
That need for connection, that need for purpose, that need to feel like we belong.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive into thriving with practical solutions,
Yeah.
I want to thank you for listening and joining us on this journey of discovery.
It's been great exploring this topic with you, and we hope you've gained a better understanding of ADHD from this.
Yeah, and maybe even a renewed sense of hope
Yeah,
and some practical strategies that you can use in your own life.
absolutely.
And remember, you're not alone on this journey. There are so many resources available.
There are.
Communities to connect with, and a whole movement of people who are working hard to create a world that is more inclusive and accepting of people with ADHD.
It's a beautiful thing.
Hmm.
And if you've been touched by ADHD, whether personally or through something you love, you're not alone.
You're not.
There is support out there,
Yeah.
and there is hope for a brighter future.
That's a great message to end on. So thank you for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll be back soon to explore more fascinating topics and unravel even more of the mysteries of the human mind. You know, it's funny, as we've been going through thriving with practical solutions, I've realized that a lot of the stuff in here
Yeah.
applies to everyone, really, not just people with ADHD.
It's true. One of the things I really like about this book is that it helps us understand human behavior better.
Yeah.
It gives us tools to improve our focus, how productive we are, and even how we manage our emotions.
It's like a brain management masterclass, but disguised as an ADHD guidebook.
Exactly. As we're wrapping up with this book, I keep thinking about this whole idea of neurodiversity and how important it is to create a world that embraces and celebrates different ways of thinking.
Yeah, it's about moving away from that idea that ADHD is a problem to be fixed,
Right.
and instead recognizing the unique abilities and perspectives that come with it.
And the book really highlights those strengths with the success stories it shares.
They're so inspiring.
It challenges the idea that ADHD holds people back and shows that people with ADHD can be successful in all parts of life.
If they have the right support and strategies,
Exactly.
from entrepreneurs to artists to musicians to athletes, the book shows us people who have used their ADHD to achieve amazing things.
And those stories are important because they give hope and inspiration to others who might be struggling.
They show us that ADHD isn't a limitation, it's just a different way of thinking, a different set of abilities.
And it's about finding the right environment and the right tools to make the most of those abilities.
Exactly. The book talks about how some people with ADHD do well in traditional work environments,
Right.
while others need more flexibility and independence to really thrive.
It's about creating spaces that support different ways of thinking and working, and that goes beyond just the workplace, too.
Yeah, for sure. The book talks about how important it is to have supportive and understanding environments at home and in our relationships as well.
And communication is key.
It is.
Open and honest, communication is essential for any relationship to work. But it's even more important when one or both partners have ADHD.
The book gives some really great tips for better communication.
Yeah, like being aware of your tone of voice and body language, using I statements to talk about your feelings,
Yeah.
and really listening to your partner's point of view.
But what about when things get tough and communication breaks down? What happens when there's conflict?
The book talks about how important it is to develop healthy ways to cope with conflict.
Okay, like what?
Maybe taking a break to cool off,
Okay.
practicing mindfulness to manage your emotions, or even getting professional help to learn better communication skills.
It's like having a plan in place for those times when things get heated.
Exactly. So
Right.
you don't just react without thinking or say something you'll regret later.
Right. So besides communication, what are some other ways that partners can support each other when one person has ADHD?
The book talks about creating structure and routine,
Okay.
setting clear expectations, figuring out who's responsible for what around the house,
Right.
and using calendars and reminders to stay organized.
That makes sense. Structure and routine can be really helpful for someone with ADHD.
Especially when life feels chaotic.
For sure. It's also important to celebrate each other's strengths and recognize that each person brings something unique to the table.
Exactly. It's about appreciating those differences and finding ways to make up for each other's weaknesses.
And offering support and encouragement,
Always.
especially when one partner is feeling overwhelmed or discouraged.
It sounds like the key is to really approach the relationship as a team,
It is.
where you're both working together to navigate the challenges of ADHD and celebrate all the good things, too.
Exactly. And the book is full of great advice and real-life examples to help couples do just that.
It is.
You know, as we've been talking about how important understanding and support are, I've been thinking about society's role in all of this.
Yeah?
How can we create a world that is more inclusive and accepting of people with ADHD?
That's a great question. And the book actually touches on this, too. It talks about how important education and advocacy are.
For sure. The more we know about ADHD, the better we can challenge those harmful stereotypes
Right, and misconception.
that lead to stigma and discrimination.
It's about raising awareness and creating a culture of understanding and acceptance.
And that starts with having open and honest conversations like we are right now.
Exactly. We need to create spaces where people feel safe to talk about their experiences and struggles.
Yeah, without being judged.
And we need to listen to those stories with empathy and compassion.
And we need to celebrate how different our minds can be and recognize that there's no one right way to think or learn or act.
Absolutely. We're all wired differently. And that's something to be celebrated, not shamed.
It's such a powerful vision. And, you know, this conversation about ADHD has really made me think about my own experiences with focus and productivity.
Oh, yeah. You too.
I don't have ADHD, but I definitely have times when I struggle to stay on track or get things done.
And the book has a lot of useful strategies for those moments, even if you don't have ADHD.
Totally. I'm thinking about those tips for creating a better work environment.
Yeah, like minimizing distractions.
Breaking down tasks into smaller chunks and using timers and reminders.
Those are things that can help everyone.
Absolutely. And the book also talks about self-care, which is so important.
It is, especially for those with ADHD.
But also for everyone, really. It's about knowing your limits, taking breaks when you need them, and doing things that nourish your mind, body, and spirit.
It's easy to get caught up in the busyness of life and forget to take care of ourselves.
So true. And when we don't take care of ourselves, it becomes that much harder to manage those ADHD challenges or any other mental health issues for that matter.
This is such an important message. It's not just about managing symptoms, it's about taking care of yourself, embracing what you're good at, and living a full life.
And that's something that everyone can relate to.
Absolutely. And I think thriving with practical solutions really gets that message across.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm feeling really hopeful about the future of ADHD.
Me too.
There's so much exciting research happening, new treatments are being developed,
Yeah.
and most importantly, there's this growing awareness and understanding of ADHD.
And for you, our listener, we hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights and a renewed sense of hope.
Yeah, whether you're dealing with ADHD yourself or just want to learn more about how different our minds can be.
There's something in this book for everyone.
Remember, you are not alone. There are resources available, communities to connect with, and a growing number of people working to create a more inclusive and accepting world.
And if you or someone you love has been affected by ADHD, there is support out there and there is hope for a better future.
Thank you for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.